opinion, is the fact that you spend an entire turn just shuffling your team back into
Mm-hmm.
place, and you never get the advantage. So yeah, I would probably say waking up to a ghoul in pitch black that crits me with some witches behind it is probably an immediate. Can I escape? Can I just retreat? So that's the answer I'm going to go with, at least for now.
You actually kind of brought up leading into my next question. In Pitch Black Dungeon, something that has been very noticeable is the fact that they have all these different types of monsters that have like these little traits before their names, which is a throwback to like Diablo 2, where you would have a bunch of monsters that have these small little quirks about them that made them more potentially stronger. Which
Right.
one of those little quirks or little titles do you find to be the easiest to deal with and the most difficult to deal with?
Oh, that's a really good question. So our first run, okay, so we just talked about the damnable affix, right? So what you're talking about in PBD is these affixes, these little attributes that are randomly generated in many cases for the different mobs you run into. And it is exactly like Diablo 2 or 3, where I when I lost my first hardcore character in Diablo 3, I think it was like a teleporting laser something affix that was just so brutal, and I got trapped and just burned to death. So it's similar to that feel. You walk into a group, and that's what's great about Pitch Black Dungeon is every single group makes you adapt and puzzle solve in a little bit of a different way, little different priority system. So some of these affixes are terrifying. Some of them are kind of laughable, and others are really, really tricky. Probably one of the most terrifying is the charming affix, because it literally works exactly like the siren. You know that if you don't get a stun or kill the charmer, you're gonna lose one of your team, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if you fight the siren enough, if you fight the, because we farm that mini boss pretty regularly, you know that if, say, a Dismas, a highwayman, gets taken from your team and then crits and bleeds one of your characters, you're screwed. So the first time we walked into a champion dungeon, everybody told me it's going to be a wipe fest in Pitch Black Dungeon. Don't don't even think about it. Like, this is where other streamers just quit the game, is when they get into champion PvD play. The first group we walked into was a charmer, and it stole my hound mask. So literally just took like a 5-minute breather, and I had to just think about how the hell I was going to survive that group. That is very different to something like a loot shifter. Okay, so a loot shifting is literally has a different loot table that changes per turn. It has no added benefits. It has no added. I don't think it does, at least. I mean, I could look back at the glossary. The glossary is huge for these
Don't think it
affixes.
does either.
Yeah. Uh, what just happened here? You still seeing me?
Oh, I still see you.
Okay, good. Yeah, my computer just wigged out there. Sorry about that.
No, you're
Okay,
good.
yeah. So now we've got the computer affix too. I feel like I actually just got attacked by a damnable because all the lights went out. So yeah, a damnable is another really great, because as I said, you can absolutely do fine and be almost mechanistic moving through Pitch Black Dungeon. But if you turn a corner into a wrong group, the lights go out. It's a huge stressor. It just changes the whole thing. We ran into one really interesting one the other night in our attempt on the Prophet, which was called Realm Defying, and literally it summoned three enemies from the darkest dungeon, right? So the highest tier enemies, and then it's like you're in front of this otherworldly cosmic background that's spinning, and if you don't kill the Realm Defier, it just resummons them. It resummons everything. It just continually
Ooh.
resurrects everything that you're fighting. So that one was pretty scary. That was kind of like one of those, like that was kind of like a deer in the headlights. Stood there and thought about it for about 30 seconds and didn't know what the hell I was playing. So yeah, I mean, the easier ones are ones that just have to do with loot, or they have to do with maybe even healing in many cases. They just don't have the potent mechanics that take over your teammates, that crush your torch, that like Deadeye is something we walk into all the time on snipe, like certain ranged characters.
Mm-hmm.
Second you get Deadeye, you know that a lot of range damage or even a big crit might be coming your way. So you know to prioritize that. Second you run into something that is loot shifting, you kind of laugh at it and go, it's a nice concept, but it's not really that interesting. So, yeah.
And now we're going to delve into the mind of ElementFive. If you
Okay.
could create your own character in Darkest Dungeon, what would it be and what would it play like?
Oh my goodness. I should have prepared an answer for this one. I have been asked this so many times. It's such a damn good question. Uh, so right now, one of my channel mods and one of the content creators, Hooded Lay, is working on a character that I had an idea for a long time ago, that I thought would be really cool, but it wasn't a mechanic that existed at the time. She's working on a kind of ninja that works specifically around stealth, kind of a rogue class. There
Okay.
are a lot of like assassin-y classes. There's even AJ's Action Jack's assassin class, which is pretty cool. The Highwayman is pretty neat. The with the Shield Breaker DLC, we actually saw cloaking as a mechanic come into the game. It is something that you have to deal with. The Grave Robber gets cloak in a couple of her abilities, at least in PvD, which is interesting, but there's not much you can do with it. I don't see people capitalize on it. Nobody seems to really know anything about
Mm-hmm.
it. So I'm very, very excited to see the realization of that concept come through the talented work of Hooded Lay and Oh Nightmare. They both worked on a modded class called the Werewolf, which is another one of my favorite
Yes.
classes. I really have a thing for transformation classes. Transformation classes are something that are incredibly hard for people to create and program. If you ask Muscarine about this stuff, for example, the last class he made was a transformation class called the Shrapnel, and he was so fed up with the transformation system, he was like, I'm done, I'm out of the modded thing, I can't do it anymore. So this is why the Abomination was weird. People wanted a werewolf, and they said, well, we'll give you something close. It's an
Mhm.
abomination, and people are not necessarily happy with what it is for a lot of different reasons, the reasons you brought up, but at least that mechanic exists. The transformation is a piece there, so we can mod that. So I would probably go in a direction of transformation. One of my favorite modded classes is Marvin Sayo's Lamia.
Yep.
Lamia is an amazing healer and stress healer, and then she turns into a snake, stresses out the rest of your party like the Abomination does in a similar way, and has a ton of offensive utility. Not a lot of people know how to use her. Not a lot of people use her as a snake. So many people come into my chat and they say, I've never seen anybody go snake, and we're doing it nightly, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is something that is so much fun, and at the right time has actually saved things. We took on a cannon boss where literally everybody missed the matchman, and it was about to light the cannon. We missed the stun on the matchman, and the cannon had 11 HP left, and we could decide either we go full in at the cannon and kill it before the matchman lights it and it crushes our whole team, or we try to get to the matchman in some other way. Literally, I popped Snake, I got out of her healer form, and she dealt the damage blow. We did 12 damage to 11 left in that cannon, and she saved the party. So transformation characters are amazing. They are a lot of fun, and the thing about them that is kind of cool too is that you don't have to. They come off the stagecoach with all of their abilities already unlocked, because they're either in form A or form B, basically. So you don't have to manage that as much. It's like the character's simpler, but it offers more complexity when you need it.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like transformation classes. I love that Hooded Lay and Oh Nightmare did the werewolf. They did that really tastefully. I think it's a bit too powerful in certain respects, maybe underpowered in others, but that's what you get. The game is not perfect. Modders do the best they can, and I think so she kind of worked on this sort of cloak ninja idea thing that I had, and it's going to be exciting to see that. Otherwise, it would be a transformation character. I don't know exactly what it would be. I love that so I just have to throw this out there too. Action Jack did make a class called the Ironclad. The Ironclad is literally a mech, okay, which I think is so cool because it fits a lot of my theme. But it's literally a mech built by engineers in the hamlet in a shop owned by Muscarine, and they were like in a dungeon and they found the blueprint and they were like, what is this thing? They went to Musk's shop, they built it in the hamlet, and it is literally like a Darkest Dungeon mech that is very steampunky in the sense that it has a drill and it's kind of like shaky and movie, and I just thought that's really creative and inventive. AJ has done some really, really cool conceptual things. I think a lot of his stuff needs a little bit of fine tuning, but then again, everybody's a critic on the modded stuff. So I love that idea, and I don't have a great answer other than probably would have been a ninja or transformation class, but I love that somebody did a mech, basically.
I do agree that with the introduction of the Shield Breaker, where they introduce stealth and cloak mechanics into Darkest Dungeon, that a stealth-based class playable is probably in the future, and something like a rogue, ninja, assassin of that nature, I do see it happening probably within the end of 2018, whenever the next major expansion is going to come out for the game. I would just
Yeah.
love it to have like a sneak attack sort of mechanic similar to how it is in like Diablo 3, World of Warcraft, Dungeons and Dragons in general, where it's just, all right, are you stealthed? Cool, your next attack automatically either crits or deals a percentage
Right.
bonus damage. Something like that, I think, is kind of necessary. Where it's a character that you literally have to forfeit your your first turn, to set up for turn 2 burst.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that idea. I mean, I think that's kind of what we're seeing in the modding community. There's something that you brought up there that's important to note, which is the modding community has only had the tools that they do to create this stuff for a very short amount of time. So the stuff that we're going to see released in the next couple of years, certainly in the next couple of months, but definitely in the next couple of years too, is going to be phenomenal. And it's amazing to be on the front wave of it. You know, I mean, Marvin Saye was about to release his own dungeon, and I mean, we leaked a couple of the bosses, some of the stuff that he's been developing for the monsters for that dungeon. He's been live streaming on Twitch the animation of those characters. It's phenomenal stuff. I can't wait to fight it. I can't wait to play with it. And the mechanics are only going to get better and better. And with the new DLC, you know, you've got the new endless mode that they're putting into the game. So that's going to change everything. The whole horde mode, where you try to last as long as you can and kind of run a gauntlet, is insane. I love that idea. I also think we know that this is the last DLC that's coming for DD. Our Red Hook is moving on a new title soon, and
Yep.
I don't know anything about it. So the fact that they're kind of doing a send off with the last DLC, which is here you can play something that never ends, I kind of love that too. So we'll see what kind of mechanics and things come from that as well.
The next Red Hook game is going to be a side-scrolling mech fighting game.
Is it really?
We can only hope.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would be into that, obviously. Yeah.
Red Hook, hit him up for that collab.
Yeah, seriously. God, I would love that.
You already kind of answered this question earlier, but we'll see if there's anything specific comes to mind. If you could adjust any character or ability in the game to either make it more playable or maybe not as overpowered, if you had to fine-tune anything in the game, what would it be, and why would you make that selection?
That's a great question. There's so much to say there. And you're right, we did kind of hit on a little bit of it. I mean, you know, most people when I started playing the game talked about how overpowered the flag was, the flagellant. And I had no idea really what that meant until I started playing it in Pitch Black Dungeon. And then I saw how reliable, like in Pitch Black Dungeon, I use it as a primary healer, as a primary tank, as a primary bleeder. It is insanely survivable, insanely useful in so many different ways. And then you go to the vanilla game and you realize it can actually reach up to rank 3. So it can actually hit the back line with its abilities, which it can't do in Pitch Black Dungeon. That changes everything, because now you can bring that to bosses where you have to reach rank 3 or 4, like the Hag, right? Where the pot is position 1 or 2, but the Hag is in 3 or 4. You can now bring that character there because it can actually reach that far. So that's insane. But I try to be humble about this, because even though I've beaten the game and I've played a lot in the last 4 months, it took me a long time to realize the utility of a Houndmaster, for example, and that it can just be played in any of these groups and it fits in so many different ways. So I try to keep that in check, because even though I look at some things and I go, that seems insanely powerful, in a lot of cases, it's just very powerful in certain circumstances. And in many cases, it's limited in others. So another thing that would be worth changing for that purpose then too would be, I think the number of provisions that are provided in the base game. When you go back to base game after playing Pitch Black Dungeon, I mean, in Pitch Black Dungeon, you basically get to have one bandage, one of anything for the most part. You get some added stuff. You could buy potions and things like that, but you're limited as hell in terms of what you can buy. And that is part of what enriches the experience of PBD, because you're forced to really think about, should I use a bandage to stop this bleed, or is this bleed going to grow and it's going to be more efficient later? So when you go back to the base game and you can just buy 9 bandages, you're like, this is weird. I think it throws people off when they first try Darkest Dungeon, looking at the provisions and going, what the hell do I buy and why? It's a lot simpler in PBD. So that, I think, could use refinement. I would love if they would add affixes to the base game. of like they have in PvD. Maybe we'll see something like that with the endless mode.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the endless mode, the gauntlet run